Hello, friends, and welcome once more to another unit review. You know, for Fire Emblem Heroes, that thing that isn't about waifus for once in your life. You sick, sick person, you. But still, you may have noticed this is not in-game, and that's mostly because, well, it's kind of dead, Jim. My recording software, my device I was using for it, its cord is broken, so we're just going to go without, and we're going to revive the old system I used to use for reviewing units, meaning that I have to put more work into it. Hooray! So let's stop pussyfooting about, bring in the elements, come on, bring them on screen. Are they up there yet? Hopefully my editing skills are worth a damn. We'll see though. And we're going to talk about the newest unit that was added in the Grand Battle. And oh boy, he hails from Green Country, meaning that we have to change this all to green, and then also talk about the fact that he's related to some of the other characters that are already in the game, so let's just talk about him right now, shall we? So allow me to introduce you to Michalis, and he may seem familiar. He is the older brother of both Minerva and Maria. And boy howdy are you going to have the time of your life trying to get him, but he does share some traits with his sister, by which I mean his older of the sisters, that being Minerva. And with that I mean, well, mostly his weapon. You see, Michalis shares her weapon in that he has Haute Claire, and for those who aren't familiar with this, well, let me just tell you, it's basically a killer axe, but it has more damage, meaning that it will do a bit more every hit, so watch where you swing this thing, okay? Okay. And from there we move on to his abilities. His first is his special skill, which is Rising Blazing Thunder. Whichever variant you have, the upgrade version gives a little bit more of a modifier, but the same principle is applied. After he hits a set amount of charges, it will do an AoE attack around that target, dealing damage to all around it. It does a lot of damage, but its charge time is about 5 charges, and well, that kind of has its uses, I guess. Moving on from that, we have his extremely unique passive. He only possesses this ability, and that is called Iot Shield. And what this does is that it nullifies all effective abilities. Basically, any sort of weapon that might have an effect over a target, like say, bows to say a flyer, which he is, just saying, it won't do the bonus damage that it would normally do. This makes Michalis quite unique in his own right. However, that doesn't mean that you can't inherit it. You see, Iot Shield is only for flyers, but they can inherit this skill. So, therefore, you can move this over to any other flying unit you may have. It's a very useful ability, but it may be a little bit of a niche, if I do say so myself. Outside of his own uniqueness there, we do have Threat and Defense. Always a nice ability to have. Means that targets will take more damage from physical attacks, which of course he is. So yeah, moving on from that, I guess we should, talk about his pros, his cons, and where we move from there. Alright, so some of you got a little bit upset with me because I included his 4-star stats in the previous video, so I guess I will correct that. I took it down and decided to pull up his 5-star stats and just put those out there because obviously people are going to get upset. But I mean, okay, 5-star stats, mostly his pros and cons are that, well, his pros, if you were in the Grand Battle, you probably felt it quite a bit, and that was that, well, he has quite a lot of attack, quite a lot of defense, and a lot of HP. His attack is probably one of his higher stats along with his health, but his defense is also quite substantial, meaning that he can get in there, take up quite a bit of damage, at least physical damage, and he will be in there threatening your defense, so he is quite the brawler in his own right. Add in the fact that he also has Iot Shield, which means that he has this passive buff that means that any archers that try to take him down, this also applies to Merrick's Excalibur, which I believe also affects flying units. Anything like that will do just normalized damage. It won't have any of the bonuses, and it means that he can be in there and in your face, and he will do quite a bit of damage. Next up, we're going to want to talk about, well, resistance and speed, and those are his cons in this field, and those are probably the only cons he has, although they are a bit more substantial in how they act. It means that mages will be particularly his bane when it comes down to it. And you'll probably want to focus on them first, as Michalis, maybe have other party members deal with it, that kind of thing, because Michalis will have issues with that. It also means that he will take more hits from other units. Those who outdo him in speed will get more attacks on him. So you're going to want to, be careful with him, situate him in such a way that he will get in there and do damage. He is meant to be a threatening force on the field. He's meant to get in there, brawl, do damage, threaten their defense, do even more damage. So in general, when it comes down to it, he can be a force to be reckoned with. And it's really up to you if you want to use him. So I guess we should probably look at the builds now and see what we got under the hood. Maybe, perhaps. Alright, so let's take a look at my first build here. Generally with this one, I wanted to retain his uniqueness. Iot Shield is kind of a nice ability, and it might be something that people don't expect when it comes to trying to shoot down a flying unit. Granted, it's Michalis, you'll probably see him and go, oh crap, here comes Iot Shield. Still, nonetheless, I wanted to retain that. Understand that. But what we wanted to move around was the idea of Hot Claire. You see, the ability to reduce the count that is required to activate a special ability is definitely something I want to take advantage of. And Moonbow is probably one of the better abilities right now that can use it. And honestly, that Raging Thunder or whatever crap he had before was just not worth it. Very little payoff for the amount of effort needed. So instead of, say, 5 turns to activate whatever the hell he had before, we're now focusing on Moonbow, which usually has 2 charges, but now with Hot Claire has 1 charge, meaning that if he's lucky enough, he could trigger it every fight for a substantial spike in damage, which, of course, every unit could use. Outside of that, I tossed in Vantage because, honestly, Vantage is a nice ability to have for almost any unit when it comes down to it. If you're being attacked, it means that he will potentially attack first if he's below a certain health threshold, and it's definitely a nice ability to have, at least on him. Granted, he won't have as much luck as some units, but it's better than nothing, and Vantage definitely will help him out in that regard. Not only that, but if he manages to trigger it while triggering Moonbow, it will definitely, well, hopefully kill his target. As long as they aren't like a mage unit or something. I didn't think about that. Don't look at me like that, it's scaring me. With the C slot, I kept his natural ability because Threat and Defense is a handy tool to have along. Not only that, but since he is a rarer unit, SP might be a little bit more tight. And in general, Threat and Defense is not a bad idea. He'll do more damage to targets around him. And well, if you really wanted to change it, I would suggest maybe a Hone skill, or perhaps just maybe Savage Blow or Threaten Attack. That way mages can't do as much damage to him. And Savage Blow is just because, well, AoEs are awesome. Am I right? 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 Okay, I think we're done here. But still, let's go over the pros and cons for this one, and I'll give you a basic gist of it. Now, the pros and cons for this are kind of the same in a way. Mostly, the only thing that's changed is that he has more active triggers, and that, well, he will be using Moonbow quite a bit more often, and Vantage will aid him, hopefully, in evading any sort of attack that might kill him. That's the effort there. But again, he still has the problems with mages, and his speed is still a little bit lower than it should be. So be aware that with this build, it might not be the fix that you are looking for when it comes to Michalis. His original concept was supposed to be this threatening presence on the battlefield. He doesn't take damage from archers anymore, and he has a big debuff in the ways of threatening defense, and that really can help out. So I just decided I would add some abilities that would be beneficial to him. 1, getting rid of that terribly long charge time, and 2, giving him a bit more survivability in the way of Vantage. That's just my concept here, but we do have another one, and this one's all about a little bit more risk if you're deciding to take it, but again, Hot Claire is the main focus here, so be ready. Oh boy, do I have a lot to tell you about this build. So when this video originally went up, for some strange reason, I put Fury as a B-slot thing and was like building around that. good lord. This is what happens when I rush through things. Usually when I do a video like this, I go through and I check everything. And sometimes I notice an error and I catch it and I put it in there. Usually it's not something huge. This time it was huge, so I do apologize for derping out so hardcore there, guys. Really, big time. All on me. Terrible. Still though, I made this build more as a joke in a way, and then I realized even more now that without this is basically stripping away a lot of his uniqueness. Michalis with Fury will lose Iot Shield, meaning that he will take more substantial damage from archers, but in exchange, he will gain buffs to several stats, but it does come at the cost of health. So I built around that a bit when it comes down to it. So A slot is now taken up by Fury, meaning that Iot Shield's gone, passive buff, all gone. But in exchange, we also have Noontime, which is the new special skill. This comes from Laszlo at 4 stars. Usually it comes from other units, but still, Noontime, and what that is, it's a poor man's soul. Basically, it's a 30% heal from damage dealt. It's not as strong as Soul's heal, which I believe is 50, but it is quite a bit faster, and that's what matters here, especially with Hot Claire, which means that every 2 turns instead of 3, it will be activating, which means, hopefully, every other fight. And that definitely helps out with Fury going constantly. Just saying. Adding to that, we of course are replacing the previous derp with Renewal, and Renewal is a fantastic ability to have along the way, for any unit really, when you need health, because every 4th, 3rd, or 2nd turn, based on the rank, they will gain 10 health, and that's nice to have. It is a bit more self-sustained, and with Fury it means that hopefully you'll be negating that 6 damage you might be taking, or 4 damage you might be taking every turn, so it doesn't hurt to bring Renewal along. Just maybe consider it. Outside of that, of course, in his C slot, I put the same threat and defense, and that's because threat and defense on its own is not, well, it's pretty good, actually. I was about to say it's not bad, but it's pretty good. It's a useful skill to have, especially for Michalis, as he is. Again, he's meant to be a force on the battlefield. He's meant to get in there, do a lot of damage. But this time, he does not have Iot Shield. Oh boy. Still, again, Fury is a higher risk kind of build, and especially on a flyer unit, I don't know how well it'll work out, but, you know, why not take the risk and try it out? I don't know if it'll work, but again, this was just a concept and idea, and, you know, I personally would go with my first build because I like that more, but I mean, this is an option as well in case you really decide to do it. So let's go over the pros and cons real quick of this unit, okay? Okay, so first off, the pros, and that is that Fury in its own right is a interesting ability. It will make up for some of his failings when it comes to resistance and speed. It won't fix them, but it will help him along. But it does mean that he will take damage, which means that you have to have certain abilities like Renewal and Noontime, which will add a bit of survivability to this whole Fury problem. You know, the whole damage thing. But on the adverse, well, the cons are that, well, he hurts himself every so often, and that's kind of something you're going to have to work through if you decide to use this build, and that's just kind of how Fury works. Granted, it's not too high of a risk, but it's a bit more higher of a risk when it comes to a flying unit. We also have the fact that we're removing the unique ability that he once had. Iot Shield is interesting, sure, it might be a bit niche, but still, as a flying unit, it still hurts to get hit by archers. He does have more defense than normal, though, so hopefully it won't be enough to hurt him substantially, but you do need to be aware of where you're sending him. Just like any other game, try to avoid the archers. You don't want him to get plucked out of the sky. But all in all, it's really up to you if you want to use Michalis in any shape and form. He's a fairly strong unit, and I mean that. He has very high attack, very high health, and a pretty substantial defense base. And I have to say, while looking at his stats now at 5 stars, I know people were a little upset that I went with 3 and 4 stars because that's what people usually start with. Still though, all in all, Michalis is really pretty much meant to be a force to, you know, frighten people on the battlefield. He's meant to get in there. He's meant to do damage. He's meant to lower defense, or, well, do whatever you want him to do. All in all, he's a special type of unit, and it's really up to you if you want to keep him, or perhaps give his speciality, his shield, to someone else. I personally think he has a place in your team if you decide to use it. There are other flyers who might be more, you know, versed in what you want, so it's really up to you at that point. Just be aware, though, that since he is a rarer unit, meaning that he only comes from grand battles right now, which means you only really get 2, and you don't really have too much leeway with what you're going to do with him. You can either give away the ability or, you know, go with him. Personally, he's an interesting character. His whole little niche here with the shield is remained to be seen, but all in all, he has, you know, pretty substantial stats, pretty good attack, pretty good health, and pretty good defense, and he could be your green axe unit if you so decide to use him. Outside of that, I do have to apologize to those who saw the video before this where it had substantial issues with it. Usually when I go through these videos and I provide all of these stats and things like that, usually I double check it, triple check it. This time, however, I was like, nah, I'm pretty good. But then I realized towards the end that that was a big mistake. And for some reason I put, again, Fury on B, what the hell, and I didn't include Renewal, and a lot of my other things were just way off the mark. I thought, hey, well, since they're getting 3 stars and 4 stars, shouldn't I focus on their stats? But I guess I should probably focus on the end result over what is provided. So I do apologize if that threw anyone off. I wasn't trying to. Still, you know, my big bad fault. I take the blame for that one. And, well, that's just kind of how it goes. Hopefully this has kind of alleviated that and that it's fixed some of the issues. Still, I'm not sure how I feel about the Fury build, honestly, even with Iot Shield, if it were even possible. But that's just how it goes. Honestly, I think the Fury build might be more interesting if you have a team dedicated to taking out the archers and things like that, because he can really wreck quite handily. And I think Hot Claire and its cooldown reduction abilities are just fantastic and definitely something to manipulate outside of the whole AoE spiel that he has when he starts. I mean, when he shows it off in battle, when you fight him, it's pretty, you know, crazy, but outside of that, I mean, oh boy. I was also considering, like, hey, he has pretty good defense stats. Maybe Bonfire might be interesting. And, you know, I'm thinking about that. I don't know. I mean, tell me if you try out Bonfire on him, honestly. It might be really weird to look at that and think about that and consider that. Either way, this is the end of the video, guys, and I love you all very much. If you want, you know, you can leave a like for my sorry ass and having to fix this thing up because I'm a doofus, or, you know, share it, see what you think, tell me what you think of the builds, outside of the Fury one, probably, and see where it goes. For now, though, guys, I will catch you all later. See you very soon.